Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today in this video I am going to discuss the modern age. As I covered all the ages before that and after the Georgian period comes the modern age, also known as modernism in English literature. That is the late 19th century and early 20th century. So now we'll discuss this age thoroughly. We'll cover all of these topics, define modernism, characteristics and influence of modernism, and transition from Victorian to modern age, modernism versus literary. It is a literary movement, characteristic of modernism, and we'll see modern poetry, modern prose, and modern drama as well. So let's get started by introduction of this age. Modern age or modernism, it's a literary movement, philosophical or art movement that arose from the broad transformation in Western society in early 20th century, and it is reflected a desire for creation of forms of art, philosophy, social organizations which reflected the newly emerging industrial world. So we see that industrial revolution takes place and people move to urban areas. Urbanization was there and new technologies introduced, and World War First took place in this age. And so how do you define modernism? It's a style or movement in the art that aims to depart significantly from classical and traditional forms, and they transform their ideas to modern ideas. So they break the traditional ways of styles and then adopted the modern style of their own. So now we'll see the forces that shape modernism. The first one is innovation. As we see it, advancement in technology at this age and new discoveries, invention, technological achievements like electricity, light bulb, automobile, aeroplane, and many more inventions took place, and this change that we witnessed was not gradual but a rapid urbanization process. Another thing is World War, and as you know that in 1914 World War One took place, so there was a mass destruction catastrophe. It was like a catastrophe, and advancement in weapon, nuclear power, mass casualties took place, and so they realization that man was perfectly capable of destroying what he created. So this picture portrays the destruction of World War One. Now another important factor, that is recession. So the Great Depression, it was basically a great economical downfall of worldwide economical downfall, economic depression during 1930s, and the whole world suffered from this economic depression. And because this happens due to World War One has inflicted on international politics and economic order, and it resulted in hunger, unemployment, migration, displacement of large number of people. And another important factor, now we'll see some theories. That is, the first one is the Bradley's theory. Basically Bradley, he was an English philosopher, F.H. Bradley his name, and his work focus on appearance and reality. He wrote a metaphysical essay, and which was published in 1893. And object in reality can have not absolute control but varies from angle from which it is seen. So his theory is regarding that aspect. And another theory is Einstein theory of relativity. So on electrodynamics of moving bodies, Albert Einstein theory of relativity was there, and he experimented with the speed of light and concluded that speed of light is constant if all natural laws are same, and both time and motion found to be relative to observer. So new invention, new ideas, new theories evolve in modern age. And another important theory is Freudian theory. So it was theory of psychologist Sigmund Freud, which is very important. And He just talk about warning forces that shape the individual psychology and personalities, and importance of unconscious motivation in behavior, and proposition that psychological events can go on outside of conscious awareness. And his work on dreams and thoughts are outward manifestation of unconscious motives. And another important theory is that of Jung's theory, and basically he was a student of Sigmund Freud called Jung, and he developed this theory and it devolving into unconscious, which explored the nature of irrational self. And his theory of collective unconscious states that there are patterns of behavior or actions, that reactions of psyche, which he called archetypes, are determined by race. Another important theory is that of Charles Darwin, Darwinian theory, and which is the theory of evolution. And he talks about natural selection in timeless book on origin of species, his biological works and experimentation, and this scientific discovery led the thinkers to question the basic and foundational beliefs of God and religion. And now we'll see characteristics and features of this modern age modernism. So basically there was a rejection of history and conservative values such as realistic depiction of subjects. Second, innovation and experimentation with the forms with a tendency to abstraction. So innovations and new experimentation took place in this age, and a refusal to acceptance of rules of conduct which were restrictive in the previous age and limited forces our human spirit. They just rebel against this acceptance of rules and conducts. And then an emphasis on relativeness of truth and meaning, and subjectivity become the main focus. Another important characteristic is priority to inclination towards the inner self rather than material possessions. And influence of modernism includes, it's basically this moment is a reaction to many events that this society underwent, as well as the lot of ongoing happenings in early 20th century. Its effects were not also limited but to a single field but all aspects of life. And we'll see influence of modernism on painting, architecture, music, dance, philosophy, psychology, science, sculpture, and literature. So there took place a transformation, means a transition, a change, totally new change from Victorian age to modern age. So we'll compare both of them. So at Victorian age, the writings or the poetry or literature of the age, the themes was optimism was there, and in modern age there was melancholy and pessimism. So these two, by comparing, you see these two are just opposite of each other. And Victorian age we saw transitional beliefs, in modern age modern views of things. Victorian age blind faith in God, whereas in modernism loss of faith, and because due to inventions scientific they didn't accept anything which is beyond their understanding or beyond scientific proof. And society centric Victorian age, and modern age was individual centric. And moral values were there in Victorian age, whereas in modernism collapse of moral values. And realism was there in Victorian age, whereas in modernism they reject the realism. And Victorian age omniscient intrusive narrator, the voice of author, whereas in modernism eclipse of narrator, varied point of views. And Victorian age wars highlighted the feeling of nationalism, whereas in modernism wars highlighted the destruction, casualties, all of these losses. And Victorian age there was a linear chronological concept of time, whereas in modernism there was a simultaneous concept of time. In Victorian age we saw belief in objective nature of concept, whereas in modernism we saw belief in subjective nature of concept. So this is a comparison between Victorian and modern age. Now we will discuss modernism as a literary movement. So literary modernism or modernist literature, which originated in the early 20th century, mainly in Europe, North America, and it is characterized by self-conscious break with traditional ways of writing, both in poetry as well as in prose and literary movement. This was driven by conscious desire to overturn traditional modes of representation, and it expressed new sensibilities of their time. Modernist writing engages with technological advances, scientific inventions, societal changes of modernity, and characteristics of modern literature. So the individual is given more importance than the society, as we discussed before, and this was deeper in human psyche. So main focus was human psyche, individualism, and it was a transitional rhyme schemes. So basically they just rebel or just omit, didn't agree with the traditional rhyming schemes, rhythm meters, they abandoned them and then they adopt their own style, free verse, which is main form of poetry of modern age, and then they reinforce the fragmentation of reality and contradicts notions of totality and wholeness. And another important feature is individualism, as I already told you, focus on individual and result in feeling of isolation and loss, and the themes of loss and exile was there. And there is no longer an anonymous omniscient third person narrative, so they openly publish their works without any restriction, and modern writings give one reader the freedom to expand their imagination, and writers use symbols, images and reference with a multidimensional. And another important technique used in literature is stream of consciousness and interior monologue or internal monologue. And stream of consciousness, a literary technique in which the writer use to write in such a way that the audience, the readers, felt like they are inside the mind of the character. So modern writers kept challenging the stereotypes regarding heroism, and which was undoubtedly a revolution on its own. And modernist novels did not treat lightly topics about social vows, war, and poverty, but reflected a frank awareness of societal ills and men's of capacity for cruelty, because they were influenced by the World War, because they seen the massive destruction, killing casualties with their own eyes, the harsh realities of life. So they were influenced by World War, their literature. And other contemporary literary movements include Imagism, as we discussed in some previous videos as well. Imagism, a literary technique, poetry that forward the precision of imagery and clear, sharp language. Basically, it's a literary technique which is used to create images in the mind of reader. It was initiated or studied by Ezra Pound. And origin of Imagism were found in two poems, Autumn and A City Sunset by T.E. Hume, published in 1909. And another important movement is Surrealism. So this was an artistic philosophy that took hold in 1920s Paris and spread out throughout the world. And important writers include Henry Breton, outlined its aim in Surrealist Manifesto and affirmed the supremacy of disinterested play of thought and omniscient omnipotence of dreams rather than reason and logic. And Breton and his colleagues were inspired by Freudian psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud psychoanalytical theories were there, and it emphasizes on power of unconscious thought. And Pablo Neruda is an example of second generation of surrealist writers. Another important movement is Dadaism, which was a movement that began in Zurich, Switzerland, 1916. And the founders of this movement stuck upon this essentially nonsense were to embody a simultaneously playful and nihilistic spirit alive among European visual artists. So the main theme was nihilism, means meaningless of life. So they salvage a sense of freedom from cultural and moral instabilities that follow the war, and they embrace both everything and nothing. So this nihilism, nothingness, was main theme, and then comes the expressionism. So it was a literary movement again across our reaction against materialism and rapid mechanization, means the rapid growing of machines and urbanization took place due to industrial revolution and dominance of family within pre-World War European society. And it's a movement that tries to express the feelings and emotions of people rather than objects or events. Now we'll see modern poetry. So modernist poetry refers to poetry written mainly in Europe, North America between 1890s to 1950 in tradition of modernist literature, and some of noticeable and most important poems of this age include Robert Frost, North of Boston, T.S. Eliot's The Vast Land, Ezra Pound, Lustra, W.B. Yeats' The Wild Swans at Collie, and E. Cummings' Tulips and Chimneys. And modern prose, the most significant prose writing of this period was inspired by neither hope nor apprehension, but by a bleaker feelings, bleak sadness, melancholic feelings that new century would witness the collapse of civilization due to World War. And there was remarkably productive period of innovation, experimentation, and novelists undertook the challenges of literary conventions. And some of the most remarkable novelists of this period include Joseph Conrad, his novel The Heart of Darkness, James Joyce Ulysses, Virginia Woolf, To the Lighthouse, and William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, and Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. These are important works in prose. And now we'll see modern drama, the drama which has suffered a steep decline during Victorian age. Drama was at peak during Elizabethan age of Shakespeare, but after that we saw decline in drama, and Victorian age revived with the greatest forces that began of 20th century, and its course of 6 decades witnessed many trends and currents in 20th century drama. And English drama during modernist period fall into three categories. The first one is earliest phase, which is marked by plays of G.B. Shaw, George Bernard Shaw, and John Galsworthy, which constitute social drama, and they modeled on plays of Ibsen. And second phase is the middle phase, which comprised the plays of Irish movement contributed by some elites like Yeats. He was a novelist, and this phase the drama contained the spirit of nationalism. And third phase, the final phase, comprised the plays of T.S. Eliot and Christopher Fry. And here we saw the composition of poetic dramas inspired by early and Elizabethan or Jacobean traditions. So we'll now discuss some of the features of modern poetry, which include they were totally against Victorian and Romantic poetry. So we saw a transformation in the views of modern poetry, and disappearance of religious faith. They were less inclined towards religion due to advancement in technology and science. So they just want, before accepting anything, they just want proof. And regular meter have been discarded. They just break all the convention of rhyming schemes of poetry and discover their own style. And no regular rhyming scheme, they follow free verse, and new techniques and juxtaposition of ideas was there. Use of reverse, as I told you, use of irony, use of metaphors, and the main themes of poetry of this age include satirical works, war, because they were influenced by the World War I, and social injustices, art, human rights, life dissatisfaction, and futurism. So this is all about modern age. Hope you understand. The notes are in the description, and in next video we'll discuss postmodern age. Thank you for watching.